Greetings and welcome. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, my patrons, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. There's just 5 titles in my broadcast today, and one that didn't get included before the 5 is a title that says, "You Choose Your Attitude, Inescapable." So, courtesy the writings of Viktor Frankl, exposed to a very long time ago, at least give to the notion that, and a believer in the fact that your attitude is completely your choice, and that makes it inescapable. Okay? And that's not only the attitude that you choose in your mind in a way, but also the attitude of your human beingness as a body in space. It's attitude as a spaceship. Here we go. Now, 5 things. The first thing. The title is the 13th Annual Michael Miller Pilates Convention. The 13th Annual Michael Miller Pilates Convention. And my notes right underneath that title say, same time, same place, same reason. And I'm broadcasting to you, hoping to share with you the reason, because it helps to know what you're celebrating in order to celebrate it as it's meant to be. Two things. See, Michael Miller comes, whatever else you want to talk about as the messenger, the message is 2 things, CT and MMP. And to the extent that you're listening to this, or you have any introduction at all to the fact that I claim to be Michael Miller, and that my 2 professions are identifications, if you will, I characterize the fact that I've identified core new tension in the body, and that's oppositional rotation between axes. Okay? So there's 2 axes of rotation in the body. They're capable of engendering or creating a rotational dynamic opposite one another, sort of built for that really, and thereby creating core new tension between those 2 rotational dynamics. And it goes to the axis through the ears as well, and much more easily attainable and demonstrable between those 2 axes, shoulders and ears. In any event, the 13th Annual Michael Miller Pilates Convention, same time, same place, same reason. The same time is the moment of solstice. The moment of solstice. So look up at timeanddate.com, is it seasons? And look at when the summer solstice happens. And at least in Mountain Daylight Time, in my time zone, it's been some very inopportune moments for anybody to show up. But this Friday, June 21st, is solstice at 9:54 a.m. Friday morning. The Boulderado for brunch after. So it seems like out of my necessary and passion for the subject and the celebration of the convention. The convention is to convene for those who recognize core new tension in the body, and who understand or appreciate one point of view of Pilates. There are thousands, but this particular point of view is based on the biology and the physics of our experience and an attempt to explain Pilates based on what's in Joe's book. So MMP is a theory about an ideal within Joe's original work that can be arrived at from the point of view of MMP, from Joe's definition, his statement right after his definition that contrology develops the body uniformly, and then the sequence of his exercises. The mat choreography, is the mat because it reveals the grammar. So the place is Lost Gulch Overlook, which is a nice little park area. You can just drive up and not get out of your car. I recommend if you come that's what you do. If there's a place to park, then you might stay on all the flat areas and look at the signs. Pay the fee if you're from out of Boulder County in an envelope, and if there's no envelopes, you can't pay the fee, but hopefully there will be. And yet the area, often called Eagle's Nest in my younger years here, encompasses a rock outcropping from which guys with wings on their arms, paragliders, not sitting down, but fixed wing, right? Fixed wing. Used to take off from and go around the mountain and land at Chautauqua, but that's not done anymore. Anyway, it's a beautiful view of the Continental Divide. And even if you don't go at the solstice, sunset's a great time to go. You'll probably have company, of course. In the dead of winter, when it's really cold out and the wind is whipping, if you really want to clear out your mind, it's again a great view, a big vista, but you probably won't have any company. Or in the terms of the solstice moments over the last few years, then either. But why is MMP convention timed for the event of the solstice? It has to do with who Joe was, from my perspective, and then what his method is about. So it starts with Joseph Pilates as a human being who anybody that I ever knew that knew him always used with some degree of reverence the adjective that Joseph Pilates was a survivor. And when you look at history and see the times that he went in and why he ended up in America, teaching what he was teaching near a ballet school, if you were a car mechanic, you'd open up at the Indy 500. If you're a body mechanic, you'd open up where bodies are running around like the Indy 500. So, the reason is that within the MMP point of view, the complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit translates to being, thinking, and observing, and how critical observing is to surviving. And the reason it's on the solstice is because, now go to Machu Picchu in the Inca Empire, and Machu Picchu is this lifting up out of the rainforest to where you can see and observe, and through the observing, witness bodies in motion. Big bodies, like the body that we're on. And in witnessing that timing of that, and knowing where that places you in the cycle of bodies in motion that is observable. See, observing. Out come the timing of the planting of the crops, which was primarily agrarian, right, for the whole empire. So, observing. The rock outcropping at Lost Gulch Overlook is nowhere near Machu Picchu, but it's still a place where a lot of observing can be going on, unless it's at night in the middle of a thunderstorm that turns into a lightning storm, and then you want to be in your car headed down the mountain. So that's the reason. That's the reason for the place and the reason for the time. And so what matters to me is that you, the viewer, think, what does it take to survive as a Pilates instructor? Well, if you're hip to MMP, you know that summer solstice is the time for the convention, because it's something that's observable. That in observing the solstice, you recognize the necessity of observing in doing Pilates as a means to survival. Because Joe's a survivor, his method is survival training. And that method is choreography that's in response to the physics that we find ourselves in. So, number 2, I'm so relieved. I'm relieved because it's a decent time to show up for my convention if you're so inclined. And there's other stuff to do without me just saying there's a lot, which is true. There's a whole lot of Pilates in the area. Sometimes I say along the Front Range, but that ignores Vail and Breckenridge and Aspen and Grand Junction. But that gets to be a little far, and I'm almost out of state in terms of a drive. In any event, I'm relieved because there's another convention called the Momentum Fest, hosted by, I think it's mostly hosted by, a major manufacturer of equipment. And so now, especially because now I have something, say, what else to do besides attending whatever part of the convention you want to attend with me? There's other stuff to do, and there's other stuff to do as a specialty in time, because lo and behold, there's somebody else talking about the solstice, right? And so now, by all means, if you have an inclination to come to my convention, but wonder what else there is to do, there's a whole big thing called Momentum Fest. And the only senior Pilates teacher to me, in terms of those who started teaching Pilates in Boulder, it went Ferentino, Stefan, Deborah, me, in terms of a lineage. There I am bragging about snobbery or talking about who I came to Pilates through. Actually, for me, it was Ferentino's me, because Ferentino's pointed me to the book, and the book was enough to make the connection that I never looked back on. So, thank you, Bob. Talk about someone with an air of attitude. When I explained to him what I wanted to teach, he said, well, you mean Pilates. And we have someone coming for that, which was Stefan from Beverly Hills. But before then, I went, of course, on my own and started doing the research, and by the book, I was hooked. So, now you can, that's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and if you're there at 9:45, Deborah Colway teaches a chair workshop of some kind, right? And Stefan picked Deborah to be his assistant in delivering the reformer classes of Ken's, who's hosting or putting on Momentum Fest. It's a tight circle, don't you think? In any regard, at 9:45, Deborah starts her presentation of a chair class. As far as I know, it's on the web. And at 9:54, 9 minutes later, I like that, 9 minutes, the number of the hermit, hermit.com. But 9 minutes later comes the actual solstice. And imitation is always the sincerest form of flattery. And Mountain Fest has now promoting a countdown to the beginning of the Mountain Fest, which is way cool. And I thought it was enough to do it for the Michael Miller convention. And the countdown for the Momentum Fest happens 2 hours and 54 minutes sooner. Okay, so here we are talking about time frames and countdowns. So there's a countdown to the beginning of a Friday, Saturday, Sunday convention, and then there's, or a festival, I guess, and it's more than Pilates, a whole bunch of other stuff, and merely celebrating spring, right? It's cool. All kinds of equipment. It's where big money would go to make the most money by promoting the broadest band of equipment they have to the broadest audience. See what I'm saying? It's not just a Pilates gig at all. But I think there's a lot of Pilates equipment there to be had for the savings of shipping because it's there in front of you. But I would add a third countdown. And that's the countdown why I'm so relieved is because on Saturday night, Momentum Fest is having a party. And if you had 3 countdowns, it would be nice to know when Momentum Fest started. And that 2 hours and 54 minutes, almost 3 hours later, the solstice occurs. And then the party is the next day, probably around 7 o'clock. I'm not sure when that is. I got an email. And if your intent is to cover the convention with me, and you're interested in going to Momentum Fest, you can go to Momentum Fest and cover like the first 2 hours and take an hour to get a half hour's drive away. Be Chevy Chase at the Grand Canyon, and then tootle back to the Momentum Fest, having driven up Boulder Mountain and seeing views that you won't get from anywhere else. So that would be a way to do both. Now me, I just plan on making it to my convention, hanging with those that appreciate or are celebrating and focusing on the identification of CT and MMP. Doing the Boulderado after that. And then trying to make the party Saturday night. So that's why I'm relieved and flattered to be imitated and having countdowns. And for me to you, I want you to understand the difference in what the countdowns are pointing to, and that the MMP countdown is pointing to bodies in motion, planets, matter of fact. observable changes in movement on a planetary scale. And it's this observing, it's this capacity as part of our humanity that we live or die by. Part of, I said, right? Being and thinking also matter. But MMP is at a particular time, at a particular place, for a particular reason. I would be sure to establish alarms on your phone for all three. So you know when the Momentum Fest starts. 2 hours, 54 minutes later, you know when solstice actually is happening. Look it up. And then on the web, look up when the party is and set a countdown for the party as well. Because no matter what else happens, in the course of you entertaining yourself in the movement arena, in this locale, those would be three things to recognize. 2 being arbitrarily scheduled things, and 1 being a recognition of the movement that we're already in, and how observing is a key role to surviving. And so my number 4 is called Know What You Know. See, know what you know. And right under that, my comment is MMPC is a celebration of surviving. Because the challenge of Pilates is to survive. It's about survival training. It's conditioning meant toward enabling you to survive whatever comes up. Okay? I just went through bodies in motion. Oh, these bodies in motion, right, take you to observation. We're talking about survival. And through observation, we can tell, we can observe bodies are in motion. Maybe not just our own human body, but bigger bodies than that. In the merry-go-round motif I talk about a lot in terms of spaced repetition in order to become familiar with something, in order to take an understanding of that something to a deeper level, right? You have to take some degree of familiarity with you, maybe that's like a context with you, into understanding that, whatever you're understanding, deeper. And so, in watching the carousel go by, you may not even realize it's a carousel until what goes by disappears and then comes back around again. And you go, oh, well, and yeah, I saw that, right? And so, in that spaced repetition, comes familiarity, and from familiarity comes an improved capability at exercising or developing more control. Right? You with me on that? So when I say know what you know, there's observation, and then what you get from observation is anticipation. Because if it went by once, maybe it's going to go by again. And if it does go by again, see, then what? Then anticipation comes into it. And with anticipation can then follow preparation. Joe's choreography, doing the mat. So when I say know what you know, what what do I want you to know? Well, it comes back to two things, right? CT and MMP, and that someday I want you to be making lots of money just as a presenter explaining CT and MMP. Less than an hour. No great depth or detail, just an explanation that sort of fits the circumstance. Leaving CT alone for a minute, coronary tension, the MMP point of view is just one point of view out of thousands, right? All of us as individuals that teach Pilates only come from our simulation of what we think it means, or what it is to us, right? Because historically there is no explanation or acknowledgement of what you know if you know about MMP. Because it's MMP that assumes, by theory, that Pilates has an essence of its own. Pilates has an essence of its own. When you know what you know, when it comes to MMP, you know that Pilates just isn't something that has no definition, that it's up to you to clarify. I mean, it's up to you to clarify if you can, but what it is perfectly clear. Number 5. The title is Exhale to Prepare. And those are common words for me as an instructor, often because I'm looking to intentionally trigger instinctual inspiration. ITII, intentionally triggering instinctual inspiration. It's a contrivance of my thinking that seeks to get a more organic impulse to initiate from, so that I'm not just initiating from my thinking, I'm not just deciding to stop going out and to start coming in, but I'm exhaling all the way out to prepare. And then when you need air, so say that, when you need air, when do you come up? When do you come out of an effort? I'm not talking about always. And you'll know that when you understand what I'm talking about, because it's not applicable everywhere. But in the spine stretch, endpoints at ankles and ears, and you're reaching forward, up and rounded and pulled back, and making as big a round as you can between the endpoints of ankles and ears. You continue that effort long after you're out of air, because you're capable of continuing the effort. And waiting for what? When you need air. It works well with a large group of people, and you're trying to help them figure out how to listen to themselves and initiate movement from an organic response that comes from within themselves, outside of their thinking. Hello, being, right? The being. The being comes knocking saying, I need air. And it's the thinking that recognizes that and facilitates that. So that was my number 5 comment. And then there was just summary. So this is my 13th year. If you can't be there, which most of you can't and aren't. Those of you over the course of 13 years knows that this is like when the beeper goes off at 9:54, exhale all your air, or perhaps just before that. And then wait. See, wait. On the fanciful, I know it's not literal, on the fanciful notion that here you are exhaling as the planet's going around a curve, and you're exhaling into the curve so that in the transition on the other side of the solstice, your inhale takes you out and into the beyond the curve. See? And you can do that no matter where you are, no matter how you are. Because what are you doing? You're observing for when you need air. See? You're in anticipation of what? When the need for air shows up. And in that preparation for when you need air, you use that or can use that need to breathe in to be the foundation of whatever movement comes out and away from that. So know what you know. And I often talk about, as a Pilates instructor, the presence of big money and how it expresses itself and what it's interested in. And that understanding its character helps you clarify who you are as a Pilates instructor. Right? No matter who you're teaching for, if it's under the auspices or through someone else, carry your own insurance, right? Get your own signatures of release with an email and a name and a date. I'm relieved and I'm flattered and I'm broadcasting to you this kind of information so that you can, number 4, know what you know, which is that through the eyes of MMP, Pilates has an essence of its own. And the essence is explainable, and you can experience what you're after in doing it. And that in exhaling to prepare, that's a thinking thing, right? In your mind, you're saying, okay, no, wait, don't just come up, keep reaching. Finish the air, but not only finish the air, but finish the effort. And let your body inspire you, chink, 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 all the levels that word applies. Let your own body, your own being inspire your movement. And in doing that, you're observing. The MMP convention is about observing to survive. And that in the pursuit of doing Pilates, you're seeking to coordinate your being, thinking, and observing. And if that sounds too dry and cut, or not enough room, it's in the realm of observing that you go right off the edge into mystical and unknowable and unknown and mysterious. Where we only have a glimpse of what it really takes to do Pilates when it comes to coordinating those 3 capacities. It's just human nature to want more and to go beyond what you already know, looking for more. There will be other vehicles to carry interest in mysticism and unknowable and undescribable within the Pilates culture. So refine and enrich and grow your view of everything. And hopefully your take on MMP point of view you'll find empowering. It's the word I wrote. It's empowering. So no matter what you're at or where you're going or what you see or what you feel, you know that Pilates has an essence of its own, at least from this point of view. And that essence of its own points to an experience that you reach for. I mean, that makes MMP a very narrow point of view about what it is or what makes it what it is. But it's the only point of view that the only point of view that I rely on to have a sense of confidence in who I am as a Pilates instructor and what that means. That it means something specific. And so, whereas big money and trying to make big money, that makes money off of selling all kinds of equipment, wants to appeal to all kinds of movers, which makes sense. My convention nestled within this celebration of the individual and the season. Inside of that is nestled a celebration of something that's identifiable for what it is, regardless of who you are. So when it comes to drawing confidence in who you are as a Pilates instructor, if you take at least partially an understanding that there may be an essence of its own in there, and that to the extent you resonate with it, you resonate with what it is. Uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement. Even if you hate me or hate any other view of Pilates than the one you have, memorize the definition so that you at least appear knowledgeable about the point of view. So you can say, yes, I know the definition, and it's crap. Or you don't have to say, yes, I know the definition at all, but if when you watch movement, and if you're wondering if it's Pilates or not, I do that a lot these days. I resort to reflecting it against the MMP definition, uniform eccentric loading, flowing through progressive patterns of movement, to see what part of what I'm looking at either resonates with or contradicts what I'm seeing. Or, I said it the wrong way. Comparing what I see to what I know of the definition, and how much of what I see is in the definition. And even then, who knows? Because to be a Pilates instructor, you have to be able to tell the difference between how Pilates is personal and how Pilates is universal. And MMP is just one filter, one point of view, or one set of data that acts as a perspective that either clarifies your vision or obfuscates it, makes it more fuzzy. If you come to my convention, come sober, come dressed for weather, hiking shoes or boots or running shoes or something, a hat, sunglasses. It's outdoors and it's a big view, so if you were just going to come to a little place that is exposed, there's no public facilities. So if you need to go at the bottom of the hill at Chautauqua. There's public restrooms underneath the restaurant. And so if you come up and then you want to go, when you get down, that's the first place you'll find of convenience. And it's a public facility. I'm not planning on any balloons this year. Just planning on handing out stickers of Cornu, of course. So if you don't come, know how to participate. And if you do come, be careful driving, both up and down. It's a windy, curvy, don't go fast kind of place. And the view is so spectacular, don't drive off the road by being distracted by the view. Have somebody else drive. Because life can't live forever, especially pain-free. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add two and two. Direct your thinking